right, well, let's kick it off. So welcome everybody back to another Corona Geek here where we talk all about mobile app development and desktop app development and TV app development using Corona SDK. Today we are going to talk about Coronium. Chris Byerly, who is doing all the amazing work on the Corona Cloud Coronium side of things, is going to tell us what he's been working on and give us kind of a status update there. So Chris, thanks for being here. That's important.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
And thank you to, I'm going to put us in gallery view here so everybody can see the shining faces of everybody else that's here. Even Perry's here. Look at, hey, Perry. We've got although his video is frozen, so he may or may not actually be here. I'm not sure.
Or he may be here frozen.
He might be. He might have just a killer itch that's going on there. I don't
have the Han Solo version.
That's right. Oh, nice. So we just got back from Casual Connect in San Francisco, and that was a blast. If you've never gone to one of those things, I highly recommend that you go. If you are an indie, I highly recommend that you compete because there are just so many other great examples and people to talk to, and people are coming by your booth, and there's investors who are like eyeballing what you're up to, and it's just an interesting thing. I thought of it more of the standpoint of people just kind of wanting to get the word out and demo their apps and that sort of thing. But it was enlightening. And there was a lot of desktop there. I was really surprised by how many laptops there were. I thought that we were going to see a lot of mobile devices there, but there were just a lot of desktop games there as well. So, if you're kind of living in the mobile space and think that desktop is dead, I don't know, maybe think again.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I think there's a resurgence in that whole thing. Steam obviously is pushing that big time, but all the services, yeah, I think there's a resurgence in desktop.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I know Michael, there at Pony Wolf, you guys have a plan to push your stuff out to Steam first, right?
Yeah, we think that it's just a closer connection to the end user. So people who are favoriting and commenting on our stuff, we can kind of comment back on. And, I know we're going to at least try to do one thing in early access maybe later this year. And so get a little bit more community participation in the creation of our games. But, between Itch, GameJolt, Steam, there's a lot more opportunity to kind of publish a game for PC and get a little bit more of head of steam going behind it.
Yeah, people were asking at Casual Connect, they were saying, is Apple TV, the TV platforms in general, are those still kind of like relevant? I mean, should someone develop for those platforms? And I was like, well, look, a lot of developers are putting their stuff into Steam. And once you've added controller support, for the desktop, you might as well just publish it on the TV platforms as well, right? So it seems like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we're doing, we can play on our Google Play TV just as easily as building out for the desktop. We have a little TV here that people can kind of hop on and play the stuff. It's fun.
Yeah. Chris, so let's get down to the bare metal here, man. You created Coronium, which is a server side. You can use Lua on the server. You've got this whole thing where you had documentation, and you could push button spin up instances on Amazon and DigitalOcean and all this other jazz, and then you joined the Corona team. So what's the scoop? Where are we? What are you working on? What kind of magic do you have in your bag?
Okay. Were you just talking to me?
Yeah, I was just talking to you.
Oh, I put a little chat. I put a little chat over here that said "coffee refill 1 sec." So,
dude, yeah, you totally missed. He was saying all these nice things about you.
Oh.
You're just gonna have to rewind and watch that later.
That's all right. Yeah.
My TiVo. Okay, so well, I kind of caught the last part. I'm imagining you want me to explain what I do around here. It's been a moving target, I think, since the beginning of the year with my discussions with Raj. And the thing is that Corona Cloud is to be a enterprise hosted offering. So it's pretty much 100% hands off as much as possible technically for people, but then GUI and interface and whatnot. That's a big project, not just creating the actual framework itself, but making sure that it's enterprise level ready and can be scalable and use the proper tools. So, excuse me, within that, people have been using Coronium increasingly over the last couple of years, which has been fantastic. And, there's been lots of talk on and off about Coronium 2, and something that I, was interested in and thought about a lot before joining Corona. But 2 years of working on Coronium for basically nothing was starting to take its toll. And so the way that things transitioned were perfect, the timing, jumping on board with Corona. But the cloud project, the Corona Cloud Enterprise is a little further off, and we're taking a unique approach with it. And the idea is that, I obviously am a huge advocate of offering a free system like this. That's why, it started in the first place. So I still have my ties and holds to that. So it was important to me that there was a free version of something. Whether it was an entirely another project or maybe a more slimmed down version of what will be the Corona offering. And going back and forth, we finally kind of came to the idea that why don't we open source Coronium, the new version, which is LS, and build it in a way that is enticing for people to contribute to, organized in a way that makes it easy for people to contribute to, and also just still easy for other people excuse me, to utilize for their development. The approach with the project on a larger, more meta level was that to create something that not only is serving a specific kind of purpose, this network interaction between Corona and a cloud server, but to also look at the project from a more of a long-term perspective, and again from a contribution perspective. Because what has happened is towards the end of this last year, a lot of people are actually starting to hack more on the core of Coronium. So they're getting in there and making changes and tweaking it, and that's fantastic. The only thing is, I pity them, because the project wasn't created in that way. When I started it, there was zero organization as far as me being concerned about other people poking around in there. And it was also a little bit of a learning process myself, creating that large of a project. So taking all those things in mind, also looking at the cloud service in general. There's a lot of generality in cloud services. And I was thinking about it more of the approach of an app developer of, yeah, you can store data and you can do all these things, and that's great, but there's also little things that you need and ways that you can quicken your work. And one of the main things that's come up over the years has definitely been, can Coronium not only do what it does with Corona SDK, but how can we bring that forward? How can we surface that publicly to the user end? How can we make a full 360 on that? So that was one of the big kind of driving factors, was how do we get from the data interchange between our Corona SDK apps and how can we also as simply display that through the web to an end user. So the typical and example is a leaderboard. How would you do that and make that a full 360 product? The way that Coronium was built, it wasn't built to be a publicly displaying web server. So
because I'm sorry. So Coronium was like you could spin up your own instance, right? Not a service where you are, giving 1,000, 100,000 customers their own unique dashboard to manage their account, right? It's a one-off, one instance, one use case sort of thing.
Yes and no. There's been some shifts there too. The other thing that was kind of not a stopping block, but a limitation was, sorry, my iCloud's talking to me. Was the one app concept. When the first server was built, the idea, I just wasn't really thinking about having multiple entry points. That is definitely not the case now. You can house as many modules as your system can handle. You can give them all unique entry points. You can cross-reference them within your cloud code. A lot of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about won't be extremely apparent until you actually use it or go through the docs. Or I got a ton of videos planned. So
how much did the demise of parse play into his decision making?
Yeah, that's another thing too, is that, during, right after I came on board and we were kind of discussing what the plans were going forward for the cloud service, obviously Parse decided to open source their thing. And which, I'm have always been a huge fan of Parse. That was definitely one of the, things that kind of helped me shape Coronium. And, it's difficult because it's on one hand, it would have been simple to basically copy and recreate Parse. But on the other hand, I didn't really feel there was any gain for us in that it's already being done. They have a huge team. It's a great open source project. If there was one thing my dad told me, he said, be better or be different. So I'm going to go for different. So have a, basically in a nutshell, obviously this is all just kind of meta talk. But in a nutshell, the idea is to bring the layer back one, if that makes any sense. With Coronium Cloud, I had had tightened a lot of the pieces in my own specific way, and in sometimes just because that's the way it worked, which made it difficult for other people to go in and kind of reverse engineer or add things to it or et cetera. And so that was definitely something that is addressed now.
Yeah, I know we had conversations about it early on where we asked, is this, you have plans to open source this? And I know at the time you had said, well, I don't mind people making changes, but I didn't really structure it for it to be an open source project. So now it sounds like you've done that heavy lifting or whatnot to restructure it in a way that makes it more of a community project.
Yeah, surprisingly, I would say that I've probably spent 80% of the time getting the project organized and you built with with standard tools that are nothing arcane. It's it's the stuff that people in DevOps use or people that are that just are using. For the compilation system, and it is all built on Chef cookbooks. So, a lot of these things, well, just to go back just one step to clarify what I mean about taking a step back on the development layer. In Coronium Cloud, I had very specifically created these very specific, objects and things and workflows, and basically they were all just taken from parse workflows. And again, people eventually started hacking in more. So what has happened here, instead of focusing so much on a specific piece of functionality, we bring it back a level and provide a tool set that can create basically anything going forward. So we're not limited to any specific type of user type. We're not limited to any specific type of, like, right now parse, I think, I mean, I haven't looked lately, but I'm pretty sure you're like limited to Twitter and Facebook or whatnot. The idea behind this project is to create it so that those are not there's no limitation as far as, what the latest buzz is and, who the coolest person to log in with is. Instead of spending a lot of time trying to focus on all that, creating a system to where you can incorporate whatever, whenever. You're not limited by, whatever's the thing.
Okay.
Now,
well, I know you have a demo, right?
Yeah, I can definitely. I'm definitely gonna. I'd definitely like to show something. So, in a nutshell, basically, there's going to be a certain amount of people who are going to drop their glass and curse my name. But I think there also are going to be a certain amount of people who will be interested in and actually kind of see the potential of what can be done. And the other thing is too, this is just a start. I finally, got to this point. Right here is the worldwide exclusive official beta release. I just pushed the release this morning. So right now for beta, a few limitations. I'm not going to be launching Amazon instances often until we get closer towards the end, just because it's a workflow thing. So mostly the beta will be mostly locally hosted, and if you want to spin it up on a DigitalOcean, you could do that as well. The issues come into play where Corona SDK won't connect to a self-signed certificate. One of the other things was a big thing for me for this new version was I wanted it to be HTTPS out of the box. So basically, when you install it, it automatically generates your certificate. It automatically generates everything for when you're ready to go into production with Let's Encrypt. So that was my intention, just to straight out. That's just the only way you get it, because that's going to be the only way you're going to be able to go into production anyways, especially working with Apple and interfacing with other things. So you're not going to get around. There's been a bar that's been raised that app developers aren't going to be able to get around if they want to get into the server space like this, and that is you're going to have a secured certificate, and you're going to have a domain name. With Let's Encrypt, you can get it free. It's easy. Again, it automatically gets installed on Coronium. So, once you're ready to go to production, it's one line of code, and it'll give you a green lock, and you're all set up. But in the meantime, it sets up a self-signed. Problem is, Corona will not talk to a self-signed. So, unfortunately, I didn't really quite hit this problem until a little late in the game. So basically, when you deploy locally, there are some flags that will basically disable the HTTPS so that you can work with your Corona app on your desktop directly with the server.
Hey, Chris, are you screen sharing with us at all?
No,
Okay,
because I am totally spacing out right now.
that's okay. I just if you were, we weren't seeing it.
Nah, I'm about to in a second here. Anyways, so that's kind of the general gist of what's going down to get to round trip back to the Corona Cloud. The idea is to utilize, obviously, the source code and the code base for the open source project. That's part of kind of the give and give back. And with the enterprise level project, there will be also kind of some pre-built modules, even though I'm backtracking on what I just said, that will be available as part of that offering. And those are ways to give it some, not only just if you just want it to be fully managed, there's also going to be some extra kind of, it's very similar to the WordPress model. I'm not sure how familiar you are with how they do their, add-ons and whatnot, or you can get it free if you want.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. So, if we kind of recap just for a second here, Coronium was a project that you started out of an interest that you had to make it possible to write server-side code and have sort of this cloud, instance that you could spin up and write your cloud logic in Lua, and then that paired, it worked directly with Corona. And so you could have your client and your server sort of model, just as sort of the JavaScript world has, IE parse, that sort of thing. And then, but as you said, that wasn't really something that you made to be a community project, in that you felt like you were still working out the details and weren't really ready to have other cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. And then now that with this version, it's more fully baked to be a community open source project, which makes sense, and a nice iteration. And then at some point in the future, maybe there's an enterprise version for the people who don't necessarily want to spin up their own instance and be sysops and all that other business. They just want to kind of put a credit card in and and have it handled for them, which I think is a model that a lot of, you mentioned WordPress. I mean, WordPress, a lot of people don't realize it, but WordPress runs on a lot of big name publications, and those are certainly not, your garden variety WordPress instances, right? I mean, they're optimized on the server to handle a lot of high traffic stuff. So those are in fact your enterprise instances. So it makes sense to have this project where people can kind of get in and do their own thing and want to run their own, be the captains of their own ship. And then at some point, the enterprise group will come who, like I said, just wants to write a check. So,
right. And they're already, like I said, there's a couple specifically that have gotten very deep into the current version of Coronium. So I'm looking forward to kind of taking that energy and focusing it on this project that's more organized. So instead of it being kind of a peck and hunt search, what the heck is going on here with this code, now it's hopefully as obvious as possible, and it will continue to be refined. I just can't help myself. So, I look at the code base now after all this, and I already see, 20 things that I want to change. So,
well, I think that's just the nature of artistry, right? You as the creator, as the artist, you see all the places where the paint didn't get pushed around the way that you wanted it. Because I know from the rest of us looking on the outside here, we look at the documentation and we look at the videos that you made and the ability to spin up an instance of Amazon, and all that stuff just looks phenomenal. But you hold yourself to a higher standard. So I can only imagine how good this next stuff is going to be, because you're playing to all those things that you wanted to fix sort of in version 1.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely really appreciated the opportunity to have, 2 years of a community that was vocal. The worst thing is to have a community and not get any feedback, or, whether good or bad. So, I've been extremely, lucky in that way.
Well, if you have the demo to show us, I'm pretty eager to see what we've got.
Okay, yeah, I hope we, let's see. Okay, Coronium LS is Coronium Lua server. It's what I call a hybrid cloud, and that's because it takes elements from kind of the old school web server days and some of the new school stuff. Back in the day, you threw up your PHP websites, piped some data into them, collected some data, XYZ. So this is, kind of taking some of those philosophies of displaying data and taking in data. And beyond that, though, there's also, of course, a plethora of other things in here. And this is live right now. You can go to this at docs.coronium.cloud. And there is a bunch of stuff in here. I'm not going to get too deep into it. You can go and look through it. There's a deployment section, talks all about the different ways to deploy. The user guide goes through all of the different construction of how you work on everything. And then, of course, we got the API, shows a lot of the major modules, all the data stuff for both support for both MySQL and MongoDB. And then the Corona SDK module, which is its own open source project. It's actually in its separate repository. So hopefully people want to hack on that a little bit. It's an interesting piece of software because it's the actual Corona SDK module itself has a total of 4 methods and about 7 files, if I remember correctly. So I'm not sure how that worked out, but go figure. Okay, so then in the about, there's some other good stuff. Get Corona SDK because that's the bomb. And if you want to do any kind of contributing, there is a little list here that will kind of talk about the different areas that are available for contributions. Again, this is not only just a project to facilitate, certain needs, but it's also a larger open source project. So there's lots of different ways you can get into it that have nothing to do with coding or Corona, and that's anything from documentation to cleaning up the chef recipes to hacking on the client. So there's lots of different places where you can approach it and play. Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just, I'm looking at the screen there and it says routing methods. And of course, I'm thinking of Node and, creating single page applications and putting routers in that. Is that the same thing here, or is that something just
very, very, very similar? I believe that there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If there's been kind of a methodology that at least I appreciate. And yes, I would say that this is based, a lot on Express and some of the other kind of, this has become a pretty standard, kind of a standard setup for routing as far as taking in some input on a specific HTTP method and then doing whatever you need to do. You shouldn't be looking at this right now, Charles. I wasn't showing this part yet. Anyway, so you can go in there and dig around. There's a bunch of stuff. It's all, I'm continually going in there and refining it. So if something doesn't make sense, don't be surprised. Let's look at spinning up a local. I'm going to go ahead and get it started and then talk a little bit more because we're working with source code now. And this is the part of the show where a bunch of people are going to walk out because they're going to be like, what did you do? But basically, Coronium is broken into 2 pieces. We got Coronium, the main server piece, and which also has the documentation and all the deployment stuff, and then the Coronium module itself. And this is for the Corona SDK client. And again, like I said, that's another separate project. I'll be posting these links more prominently on the web page. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to simply let me preface this real quick so it doesn't look too magical. It does on the documentation in your pre-flight area. It does talk about some different tools, and these are very standard tools nowadays for development and developers, and in particular, VirtualBox and Vagrant for local development. And there's nothing magical about these at all. You just go to these links that are posted on that help page, download your package for your operating system. Obviously, we're going to be working with Windows and OS X since Corona doesn't run on these other boxes. You could set up your own local Linux box if you got one in your house and you want to tap into it. The secondary piece is Vagrant, and Vagrant simply takes VirtualBox and kind of wrangles it. It manipulates it based on configuration files, one in specific, and it's very simple to use, and we'll look at how that works now.
And this is all to set up a local development environment.
This is a local development environment, and yes, and this is in the, if you get into the deploy here, in the actual deployment folders, because there will be a couple different ones. I'm working on OpenStack right now, and then Google Engine will be coming, and Azure will be coming. Even though Azure is kind of gives you a half-baked kind of image, and has nothing to do with anything else than just how they've set up their system. Yeah, builders, there'll be more different deployment options. The Amazon option, the reason you don't see Amazon in here is that's an automated deployment. That's not something that is part of the open source thing. That's because we, as a company, host that and have to deal with that. So we manage the deployment of those. But it's just like Coronium Cloud. You'll just look it up on Amazon and you can spin up an instance right there. It'll be the same exact code base, everything. In these folders, so like if you go into the localhost folder in your README, you'll get all of the detailed information about how to get your local box up. So even though I'm quickly just kind of going over the tools, I just wanted to point that out because I'm about to make this happen, and I didn't want you to think, wow, that was fast and crazy. Because in reality, I did install these tools first. Probably take about 10 minutes to get this stuff configured. Once it's there, and I'll guarantee you you'll use it in the future. So it's good stuff. Okay, so with that in mind, we'll need the source code, and to do that, we're just going to go here, hit this release. I'm just going to take this zip. And also my mouse is being really weird, so if I just like all of a sudden click something way over here, it's my mouse. Okay, so we're going to download this. This is our source code here. So all we need to do is unzip that. And just for sake of time, I'm not going to there's so much stuff to go through. I'm going to hit a lot of stuff on videos, a lot of writing coming up. I'm not even going to start digging in here and talking about all this yet. You're welcome to peruse through there, and it's hopefully fairly self-explanatory if you have any interest in those things. So basically what I want to do is I want to work with a deployment. I'm going to go for a local deployment. I'm going to do a little shortcut here. I'm just going to drag my source folder here on top of my terminal. You can go ahead and open your terminal and make your way to it, or however you can do it. Hey, go away. So now I'm in this, so now I'm basically in that directory. We can take a look at that real quick. I want to get into my deploy folder. Again, I'm going for a local host at this point. And this is explained more again in the actual deployment documentation for localhost, but these are basically just a handful of different box configurations, its memory, and then the amount of CPUs. So the tiniest box is like a 512 with one CPU. That would be comparable to a small DigitalOcean box or a smaller, like a T2 Micro on Amazon. The recommended size has definitely gone up. The original Coronium ran nicely on a 512. Now I would definitely recommend a gigabyte if you can do it. If not, you can still get away with the 512. Obviously, the higher the better. I'm going to go with 2048 is the one that I usually do my local work on with. Again, a lot of this is based on your computer. If you don't have, you can't make a virtual box with more memory than you have on your computer. So make sure that you keep that in mind, because I do know that there are some people who just punch in 10 CPUs and wonder why it's not working. So I'm in this deployment folder. It's simply one file in here. It's a Vagrant file, and I just need to simply run the Vagrant file, and that is Vagrant up. I use sudo because I'm not rooted. Once we get that going, if we don't see fire, then that's usually a good sign. So what it's going to do, it's going to now build our box, and this is going to take anywhere from, my run on my machine takes about 5 minutes, but I have seen some runs that got up into 8 minutes. So, it's probably about 5-10 minutes. When you're deploying out to DigitalOcean, it takes a little longer because there's some networking stuff happening. But so while that's going on, I'm going to move this guy. So he's going to be doing his thing. We don't need this guy anymore. We might as well go ahead and grab the client side here so we can make something happen. And I lost that. So I'm going to grab this release of the client. Again, this is a source code, but really all this is just a Lua module. So we can start getting our project together. We don't really need this guy anymore. Just going to keep an eye on this over here in the Kona. Okay, so here's the module. This is the part that goes with the Corona. And it's this folder in specific, and we will go ahead and start working on that. So what we need to do is, obviously, we need a new project. So we're going to go ahead and just create a quick demo project. Let's see, we'll do Corona desktop. Okay, I'm just going to call it Cloud for simplicity. We'll do that, and we'll do that. Okay, so now we have this guy. I'm going to drag the Coronium module into the project. And for Android, as those who've worked with networking before, you have to have in your build settings a specific piece. And I'm just going to grab this off the documentation because I'm lazy. So on the docs here, it goes through, have I lost everything here? What's going on? Okay. On the docs here, it will talk about, how you get set up, blah, blah, blah. In the Corona SDK client usage, it talks all about setting up the, basically what I'm doing now, get this set up. Also talks about the Android permissions. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in here. And we're good there. So we'll get our main Lua. So we have the client now for the Corona. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look at how we incorporate that into our project. Again, I'm going to be lazy because I'm really tired, and I'm going to put this in here and we'll talk about it. So basically, here's a cloud, kind of the base of the cloud object. This again is on the Corona SDK side. So everything I'm talking about now is specific to the Corona SDK. So we bring that module in. Again, here is my 4-method module with a bunch of pages. I have no idea how that happened. Anyways, so basically, this has come up often too a lot with Coronium, is that when you're working with like a framework like Composer, or even, you know, if you're using Storyboard or whatnot, you know, scope becomes an issue. And the way that you know, Coronium Cloud needs to operate is it kind of needs to kind of have, you know, kind of one connection point to kind of do its thing. It isn't going to work with multiple instances if you know, accidentally somebody spins up another, I guess spinning up is not the right word in this case, but if they try to bring up another cloud instance in the code, that's going to create problems. So with that in mind, you can set up, you know, pretty standard, regular style like this. But in general, Coronium is installed globally. And I know there's a bunch of people that are going to scream and go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" But you know, I have my own philosophy about globals. I believe in responsible globals, and this would be one of those. It's one global, and it provides a lot of functionality, and it alleviates you of any of the issues that you run across when you're using frameworks and you lose your Coronium scope, basically. So you can actually just install it like this if you want to. So with that, we have this installed here. Let's take a look what we're doing over here. Okay, we are all done here with this mess. And so we should be able to log into this. This is our local instance. The default IP, which you can find in the documentation. And again, this project is all about how deep you want to go. If you want to get in there and you want to change this IP, this default IP, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to get in there and change any of this stuff, you're more than welcome to do that. These are the defaults that are set on the ship out. So also too, for the beta, basically as a limitation, all user and password, the user is cloud, password is cloud admin. Again, it's all documented. You can change your login password here, but for the rest of the passwords, they're kind of locked in for the beta. So I've just logged in to the server. This is the Coronium LS. I just did an SSH into it. This is kind of the access screen here on the back end of the server. I'm assuming this is probably small too. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I'm sure, I think Charles probably left. He's probably like, I'm out.
No, I'm still here. I'm here. I was actually just thinking about this. It's becoming apparent to me that in the original version of Coronium, you abstracted a lot of things. It wasn't necessarily about the web technology. It was more about just writing Lua code on the server and having and being able to kind of push information back and forth. But here you're really giving more access to web concepts, web server concepts, and kind of giving more power to the user.
Exactly. More power to user. And again, like I said, you know, there's going to be some people that are going to be like, I don't really want that. So, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, that's kind of the point of the enterprise level. You know,
yeah.
I'm looking at it from a longer term perspective, and having community involvement could not only make the project, you know, really cool just on a level of having a community behind it, and everybody kind of sharing and making this cool tool, but you know, additionally, just all sorts of, I'm sure, different things will come in and different ideas, and you know, be interesting to kind of see how that all works. And you know, keep it simple. I mean, there has to be, at some point, there has to be some kind of like, document that kind of says, hey, this is kind of the boundaries of, where we want to go. Like it can, it needs to be simple, but not too simple,
Which is funny because sometimes when we say enterprise, we think scale back and then we think enterprise, right? And enterprise is kind of everything plus.
Right.
But in this case, it sounds like by open sourcing it and making it robust, you're kind of giving everything to everybody. And then the enterprise is, just a big button that you push, and everything just sort of happens for you. So
exactly. And again, we'll do, like the whole Blizzard style where, there will be extra bells and whistles that will, be available on the enterprise version.
So we got a server spun up. We got our client code here.
Yeah. Sorry, I told you it's big. Okay. So let's see. Let me get focused here. So we're spun up. We are going to go ahead. I'll just kind of fast forward. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this again more. And
oh yeah.
I'll be writing some more stuff. So anyway, so this is just a way to test a server. This is nothing special. I mean, I could maybe get a flying unicorn on here. That might be cool, but that's about it. So this is just gives you an idea of an echo test and, again, how routing works. Now, what we want to do is we're going to, I'm going to go ahead and create a new application. And I just want to show real quick here. Actually, let me create a new application first. So that will be sudo. Actually, I don't have to use sudo for that. And that's add, and then I'm going to call this app board. Not like I'm bored, but board. Apps created. I can take a look at my apps to make sure it's there. Yep, we got our board there. And he's all good to go. So I can look at the configuration files for any of these apps. So I'm going to go ahead and look at just to kind of show you a little bit about the permission thing I was talking about. Where am I? Config. Okay, config, and then Echo was that one app. So this is the configuration file for the Echo app. Obviously, like I said, it's just thrown on there as a tester app, so it doesn't have a key, just whatever. And it's also marked as public. And this is what I was talking about. Now, if you're going to be displaying anything on a web page, it has to be public. If not, then security measures kick in, and if you're not passing the correct stuff, you're not going to get anything back. I do want to fine-tune this a little bit more. Like I said, I'd like a little more fine-grain because once you open up module/app public, all of it's public. So let's go back to our apps here and take a look at the board config. Now you notice it's got a generated key that was made for it, but missing is the public flag. So if I tried to do something similar with this endpoint, which would be board, I get unauthorized because I'm not allowing public entry points. And when you use a GET request with just the URL, you're basically just sending it about as plain as you can get. So by having it set, by having no public flag in here, I am required to provide the API key. In this case, I know at this point some people are probably like, my head's going to explode. Okay, I'm going to go into the FTP here, SFTP, sorry. And again, for the beta, everything is cloud and cloud admin, and I'm working on it here.
Well, you're saying if people's heads are going to explode, but I think that what you're talking about is somebody who already is working in the web space, already is accustomed to this, right? They're already accustomed to all the things that you've talked about so far.
Fair enough. Yeah, I just meant it just seems like a lot of steps. But actually, once you get the workflow going, and you kind of like got everything set up, then it's pretty smooth sailing from there. So by the way, I logged in SFTP. same IP that we've been running on. Cloud admin was my credentials. Get dropped in the cloud folder. Here's access to some of the things that I can play with here. The apps folder contains the generated apps. These are the ones that we were looking at that were coming up here on this screen. So I'm going to go ahead and get the final component here that we need to make this happen. And in my cloud folder here, this is my Corona project. I'm going to go into my apps up on my cloud here, and I'm just going to pull down the board one.
And you labeled this as beta? Should someone start? Should someone use it today, or should they just sort of get in and play around today, or?
Yeah, no, it's not production ready.
Okay.
So my host obviously isn't going to work here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop in my 192. I was over here. Now I'm in my board folder. This is from the cloud server. So we'll take a look at this. So far we've been playing with this endpoint. Well, we were playing with the Echo endpoint. So we can take a look at how these modules are built. This is the basic structure. I wish I could make that bigger. Anyways, well, you can see it when you get on there. Basically, the basic structure is there's a TPL folder, which holds templates. There's an API Lua and a config Lua. And that makes up the base of a module. The configuration we've already looked at. Here is the key for that. Again, if you want to go in, you could change this to whatever you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this to my main Lua here in Corona as my app key so that I can talk. We're pretty much out of this kind of game now. When you work with Corona, all requests are done through the POST protocol. And that's so that the data that's being passed can be packed up in JSON and safely transferred. So from this point now, we're going to need to jump into Corona. There are ways to circumvent that with like a cloud key again, or if this was marked as public, if the app was marked as public, then the app key wouldn't make any difference. So we got this set up. One additional thing I have to do, unfortunately, is turn off my HTTPS WAN. Oops, make sure I spell it right. And now we're set there. So this is what we have to do basically for local setup. These two things are completely unnecessary, but necessary. So what we're going to do, so let's take a look at the API file. Now this is the main. This is kind of like the main Lua, if I was going to call it that. And this is where we build all of our what I call routing methods. And I probably stole that from somewhere. Basically, the Cloud API is pretty simple. You get an API object out of the cloud namespace, which is global throughout the server. Once you do that, you have basically two different possibilities. A third is upcoming, which will be a hook, so that you can run different tasks based on different hooks, just like you see everywhere. So that part is not in yet, but that will be a part of this API. And this is the API. It gets a little confusing. So this as well has kind of slimmed down dramatically as far as the whole kind of the processing is concerned. Very simple input layer, very simple output layer. And again, this was going to handle all the different outputs that I throw at it. So we have this this board module here, and like I said, it came with this free method. I'm going to go ahead and start changing this around. The first thing I want to do is I'm just going to like throw together just a quick leaderboard. So I'm going to want to post scores from my Coronium client. So I need a route to do that. And so I'm just going to make it very clear that I want to add a score. In my input, I'm going to, again, this is obviously very contrived and simplified. I'm going to push up a player and a score, because why not? And I'll set that up there for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and use MySQL. Surprise, surprise. I noticed that for things like leaderboards and things like that, MySQL definitely excels. And what is cool about Coronium Cloud, I mean, you can mix and match all day long. If you want to throw some documents in Mongo, go for it. You want to do some specific things using MySQL, you can absolutely do that. You're not limited. That in mind, I'm going to get a score pushed up here. I got the player, which is going to be the player name. We're going to take a score, which will be a number. We're going to push this into a MySQL database. So we'll get over here into the data stuff here real quick. I'm going to go MySQL. I'm going to, I need to store this data into a database. So obviously the first thing I need is a database. The way that it works now is there currently is no quote unquote admin per se. You can create your own. You can create private admin screens. You can create user admin screens. So, you know, there's plenty of space for that. So that's not even something that the free version touches upon right now. Now, you obviously still need access to your data and to be able to manage your data. So there are access points for both the Mongo database and the MySQL database. And they run on private ports, and the MySQL tool runs on port 11,000. And so if I want to access that, then I would need to pull up my stuff here, and we'll drop into port 11,000. And here we're going to get prompted for some credentials. Again, we're cloud and cloud admin. And for extra safety, we'll get prompted again, cloud and cloud admin. So now I'm inside the MySQL instance that's running on the server. And again, in a perfect world, this would all be running behind HTTPS, but again, that has to be disabled for now. Creating a database, I'm going to call this database leaderboard. So yes, I'm making my leaderboard database. That database is going to need a table. So I'm going to create a table, and we'll just call this one scores. And it needs an initial column. I'm giving ID because pretty much a database with an ID is a database without a personality. I'm going with unsigned ID, which means basically 0 up, because I don't expect any negative IDs. This AI here is auto increment, so we want to click that.
That's not where the robots take over.
I know. I clicked that once and ran. I got scared. So I'm also going to add these other two keys that we're interested in, and that is the player. I'm just going to do cheap varchar here. And then the score, which we'll leave an int. My game's not going to have a negative score, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that unsigned. I leave all that stuff there, and then we hit save. Okay, so here is my database. I have my ID column, I got my player column, and I have my score column. Okay, so I'm in my database, got this all set up. I'm going to jump back over here. I'm still working on my API in the cloud. This is Coronium LS. I'm going to go ahead, I get this data pushed up. I want to push this data into my database. I'm going to be fancy. I'm going to use the new data bag. I'm going to call it, I'm really going to trip on the keyboard, I can tell, because I'm just kind of out of it right now. Okay, data bag. And then you give it the database name, which is, in our case, leaderboard. Okay, so the way that databag works, there's a bunch of different things. I'm going to do an insert. So I just, we can get a result and an error back. And then I've created this little DB object, which is my databag. And in my databag, I'm going to insert some stuff. And I'm going to do that using a table. Pretty much all of the methods for the databag need the table name. That was scores. For an insert, you need columns and values. So I'm going to go ahead and put my columns here as a table array. And then my values, of course, I'm going to take from my input. I'm pushing things through here quick. You probably would want to check your input, obviously, like on your string and stuff, which leads me to, there's also a validation library that's installed that it's a third-party library, but it's very cool, and it is called REST Validation. You can find it in the Cloud Validator namespace, and then if you click this link, you can go read all about it, for all sorts of filtering. So that's a great little tool to bring in for if you need to like make sure your data is happy. You can also run a string through the cloud.mysql string utility, but I'm skipping all that right now. Instead, I'm just going to talk about it. Okay, so I got my columns and my values, so I'm all ready to go here. And I believe to make that work, I have to call nothing. Okay, cool. All right, so then I need to check for my result. If it's not there, then I must have an error. And something I see a lot is this cloud.error. It basically will wrap an error message correctly for the client. So basically what happens here is pretty much almost all of the cloud methods will return a result and an error. So really I could actually write this out like this. But the error key would be nil unless there's an error, obviously. If there is an error, then this first key will be nil. So you can easily check. If you don't have a result, then you probably have an error. So in this case here, I'm doing that. I'm saying, hey, give me the result and the error for my insert. If I don't got a result, I got an error. I'm going to pipe this back down to the client in a clean way. This cloud.error wraps it in a clean way so that when it's ingested by the SDK, it can do what it needs to do and then tell you, hey, you got an error. And so anyway, so blah, 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 got that going. So we shouldn't get an error here. And if we do, we'll go ahead and spit it back out. Oops, better fix that back. Cloud.error. And the only error I'm interested in right now is just the insert one. If it doesn't create the data bag, obviously I'm not tracking that. I'm just looking at the insert. And then if everything is successful, then I'm just going to return the result. And that is because the result is going to be a table. And I can return a table directly, and it'll handle everything that it needs to handle. So let's go push this guy back up into our board folder. This is our API. So he's back up there. So the idea was to be able to post to this add score, give it a couple of parameters, have it save it to the database. If there's a problem with that, tell us about it. If there's no problem, give us whatever you got to tell us. So that's what we're going to go for. So we got that uploaded, we got that saved up. Let's see, where am I? I'm in my main. Okay, so now we're back in Corona SDK, and we need to basically call this. So to do that, we again remember the way we have it set up, we're globalized. So this is basically carries very similar signature to the network.request. And this is the cloud request. And we'll give it our endpoint, which I believe is board slash, oh my goodness, add score. Don't take a driving test today. Okay, post add score. Now we don't include the post because that's automatically handled, but we are in the board app/module, and we do have an add score method in there. And that's what's happening here, board add score. Like I mentioned previously, all requests that come out of the Corona SDK client are post. So that's why we build a post routing method. So here's our request path. So you'll start to see this looks very, we can look at this as kind of a module, kind of a function kind of a thing. So we have our path, and then we would, as we would in any function or method, we'll pass our arguments. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pass Charles is the big winner today, and then score. We'll give him a clean grand there. Okay, so we got that set up. That's great, but how do I know what the heck's going on? So we obviously, like any network request, we need to have our listener. So we'll pop a listener up here. And our third argument for our request, be listener. So this is basically exactly the same as a Corona network request. So I'm going to want to get the ended phase of that. So I can say if event.phase someday here equals ended, then I know that my request is done. And generally, anything that comes back from a network request is in the response object. So I would actually have code in this response object. What we have in there, we don't know yet, but we'll take a look. This basically will be the response that's coming back from MySQL, because up here, the only thing I'm passing back down is the response from this database insert. So this is a response from MySQL. So I already have a good idea what it's going to send me back. It basically just gives you some metadata about the insertion that you did, like the ID, et cetera, blah, 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 which it should spit out here in a second. So back over here, I'm in Corona SDK. I got my listener set up. I'm pretty sure one of the outputs that comes back from that SQL call is called insert ID. So I'm just going to go ahead and wing it and see if that's the case. It may not be, but we'll find out. Can't remember if it's like that or like that. We'll try that one. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and print that out. Now, you'll notice I did, so there is a little slight adjustment here to kind of hijack the response object to turn it into the table that comes back in. Usually there would be like a result or something else, a key that you would put in here before you could dig into here. So, but whatever, that's behind the scenes stuff. Okay, so blah, 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 got that. And let's see where we are. Let's just run something, see if it explodes. And run our cloud onto our main. And you'll notice we have this tiny numero uno. Can you make the cloud? I don't know if you can make this bigger. Can you make that bigger? Zoom in.
Control plus, right? No.
Nope. Control plus. Oh, maybe control.
That was the.
No.
Nope.
Well, anyways, you can't see it, but there's a tiny little number 1 down there, and he happens to be our insertion ID. Let's go ahead and take a look back to make sure that things happened. We got our scores table here. Let's see, where do we see that? Here it is, our data. And here's that ID that it brought back. That was our insertion ID.
Very nice.
There's our player, Charles. 1,000 points. Good going, Charles. Good going. And so let's just add a couple other ones in here. Let's see. Sorry, Charles Mary's got more free time than you. And we'll push this. You can see we've got now our, or possibly can't see, second ID there. Let's go ahead and refresh our data, make sure. And indeed, everything's piping in. So we got a couple of requests there. For the sake of time, I'm not going to add any more, but you could. So part one, we got the data in the database. That's great. But now we want to show it off because we want people to see who the leader is. So we're going to go back over to the cloud in our cloud API here. And again, because this is a visual thing that's going to be publicly shown on the web, two things have to happen. One, we need a get routing method. And two, like we looked at earlier, we're going to need to set it to public, this specific module. So we'll just call this endpoint view scores. And I don't need to take any input in. You could, if you wanted to take in like sorting input or whatever kind of filtering, you could take in arguments. Because much like the post, where we can take in input from the data, with the get method, anything that's provided as query parameters go through the same process and are brought into the method through an input table, and it will house any of those arguments. But in this case, we don't need that. This is supposed to be short. Okay, so we want to do a couple things here. We're going to want to pull our data out of the database. We're going to want to put this data onto the web and show it off. And we're going to want to do that in a simple way. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab our data. Now, just to show you how you can mix up a bit, I'm going to actually just go for an old school MySQL call. I'm just going to use a direct query, like Coronium Classic. So select all from scores, I believe was the name, and then order. And see, this is what the data bag does for you. And we're going to do score descendant. Okay. So I created the query for the database. I'm going to go ahead and get the results for that. So I'm going to say result. And again, as I was pointing out, you're always going to get two possibilities. So it's very common to see this RE kind of thing. Cloud. MySQL is the namespace for that. And then we're just going to use the old school in the query. And that one takes the database name, which is leaderboard. No, that's not. That's right. And then pass the query. Again, we can do this so we can handle our errors. And if that doesn't work out, then we'll go ahead and return that. Okay, so that should pull scores, put it in a result, and shoot it back down to the user. So let's see what that looks like. So we're going to throw that up here. Where is my... And this guy was bored. Do we show scores? View scores? Wow, memory and sleep. View scores and unauthorized result. I wonder why that would be. Well, again, like I said, this isn't public, so we can't access it that way. So we go into our configuration file, and we're going to need to mark this one specifically as public. I'm going to push my config back up and spin this up again. It says method not implemented. Usually that means that you haven't uploaded your API file because it's not able to find the specific method. So I'm going to double check that as well. And now let's see what we get. So we got our data back here, as you can see. Now this is kind of the, you're seeing kind of the inner workings of it. Everything comes back in a result key. This isn't something that you need to be particularly concerned about. This is internally, this is what's used to kind of build all these data structures. So we got our data coming back. That's cool. We got the IDs, blah, blah, blah. So that's great, but that looks like heck unless you were feeding it to a machine. So let's throw it into a web template just to give it a little shine. So again, you get a little default template here when you start your app module. You can put in as many templates as you want in here. I'm just going to use this index one. It allows you to, like, you could do a single page app if you wanted to, if you want to use the Ajax stuff. There's some in the networking API, there's some calls for, oh God, I'm totally lost right now. Anyways, you can check for Ajax calls or HTTP JavaScript calls, so you can feedback different data if it's an asynchronous call or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So the free, 100% free index TPL that comes with Coronium is already packed up here with some Bootstrap and some jQuery. It's just pulling it off of their CDN. Sorry, guys. And then what's being used is a Lua template system called Rusty Template. And it's similar to things like handlebars and a lot of other common templating engines. In this case, you can see I got these little mustaches, and then here's like a variable or a reference to a variable out of a page table, no less. So I got the page title there, and then of course there's page content here. So for testing, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to work with our response. We're still going to leave all this data stuff in here. But let's go ahead and create a kind of a template for this file. This is going to be the title. That was one of the variables in there. Again, I'm just kind of doing this for an example.
So you're going to wind up just passing properties to this to use then.
Yeah, so then we can grab, again, everything like I said, gives you this resi. I'm going to go ahead and use my cloud template, and I'm going to render. And then I just need to enter the template name, and that's relative to this folder, the TPL folder. So that means all I need to do is type in index.tpl. And then I'm going to pass it this object I just put together, this table object here that contains the data. And
It's
again,
interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that's interesting. I've been spent the weekend kind of familiarizing myself with React.
Yes.
And so the things that you're doing here, the render and the creating the object passes parameters to the, it's all very familiar.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to. I decided there's no reason to try to reinvent the wheel too much. Let's try to stay within reason and things that people are semi-familiar with, kind of like what you were saying earlier. So to continue on through this guy in here, again, this was our previous output pre-template. We've gone ahead. I got my template here. Inside here, you can see these little denotions for page.content, and there's page.title up here. I have thrown that into this kind of table to hold that in there. Here's my page, title, content. So if everything goes as planned, it should give me a web page instead of this JSON result, and actually look halfway decent. And that is not going to be the case. And that would be probably because I haven't uploaded my template. So let's see if that changes anything. And it does not change a thing. And that's probably because I'm still pushing out this. Oops. Needs to push out the string, not the data. I'm still pushing the data out. So actually, let me just do a quick tiny refactor here. Okay. So now we are looking at the error from the template. If that fails, if it doesn't, it's going to give us the results from that. Sorry about that. Divergence. Get this good. Okay, now let's see what we got here. So, wow, that looks really pretty. As you can see, we have this seemingly HTML web page, but it's still coming out as JSON. It's in the result key. That's not going to be good. So what we can do is Coronium has what I call outputs. These are basically constants that you can add along with your result, and these will change and transform the way your content is spit out.
Wow. So this is amazing, because you're like, you really have thought of this from the standpoint of, I don't want it to just do just one thing. I want it to be able to do multiple things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be able to use the same things for all the things. Does that make any sense?
Sure.
I mean, I don't want, I want to be in one realm. And, I think this is what other people are asking too, besides the fact that hey, I've already got a server. Why should I get another server just to serve my web page? This kind of helps in that regard. So obviously this is going to be no bueno. Now the default, because the idea obviously is, and the focus is as the communication and data exchange between your Coronium SDK app and the Coronium server, the JSON output is the default. That's what it'll always try to stuff in, because once it's consumed by the client, then it's converted into a table. So that you never have to worry about. You don't have to specify that. It's actually, you can specify that, but it's actually automatically being specified and you don't even know it. The two different types that are supported right now are HTML output, the JSON, which is just the default thing, and then plain text, and that will give you absolutely plain text spit out. And this is actually used often in IoT. There's the way that a lot of these IoT kind of messaging system works is a device will leave a simple string or number on in a file somewhere, and then somewhere else that'll get ingested, and then that's how that works. It's nothing, they don't use, in a lot of cases, it's not fancy protocols, it's just some very simple stuff. So that provides that output for that as well, so that you could have an IoT device call to the Coronium server. Now, I would never recommend that, because everything you do should be done in Coronium SDK. But if you were on a different device and you wanted to call to the Coronium server and get a result back that was IoT friendly as a plain text value, that can absolutely happen. And to see what that would look like, it would be cloud.text is plain text. All I have to do is add this constant onto my return, and that's going to change the way that my data is output. So this might even look even uglier. We're going to open it. We just pushed up our API. Oh, it actually looks pretty. So this is plain text, believe it or not. Good job, plain text. I'm going to double check that. I'm not buying it. Huh? It might be. We'll see. Well, actually, it has to be, because obviously I'm seeing HTML.
Or it would be.
Okay, so there is the plain HTML version. Plain text version. And then additionally, if we want to get to the fun stuff, then we can throw on an HTML, and we should get spit out some HTML love here. And here I am. So those kind of show some of the different output methods that you can do. Again, JSON's the default. You can do plain text. You can do HTML.
And we're just looking at the default template at this point, where you haven't even added in the.
Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's just simple stuff. So I mean, so basically, like, yeah, this is great. Here I am, but we want to see our scores. So we have our score data in this table here. Depends how I want to go about doing this. I could add it into here as another element of my content table. And because it is a table, this result table is a table, I could simply do that And I now have passed all of that data to the template. So, and in this case, I would reference them through page dot whatever, and then records is my array, my table array of records that I got back. I'm not going to do it that way just because I don't want to. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pass the, oops, I'm sorry, I will have to do that. Only for this. You got to wrap, this is kind of the tricky thing, because it will get you, it'll bite you. You got to wrap any of the content that's being sent to the template has to be in kind of like an outer table. So that's why I have to do this. Okay, so basically what I just did is I put my content table together here. I got my results from my MySQL query. That's going to be a table array. I'm punching that into this parameter for the template. That's going to be shot back out into the index.template. And we are going to do some looping. We'll loop over those records, print out name and score. I'll go to sleep. We'll have a good week. How about that? Okay, so I'm not going to do anything here. I'm going to go ahead and just put welcome. And we'll scroll down here where my page content is. I'm just going to yank this out. And we're going to build a loop. So in the docs under the templating, if you go to the user guide, actually, there is generating pages. It goes into looping. It'll talk to you, shows you how to do that, the structure for that. With the rest of the template, it's pretty cool. Anything, any handlebar and then %, anything in between there, you can run as Lua code. So this is just some Lua right here. So basically, I'm just going to do iPairs on that table array of data. And then I'm going to use those values and inject them into the HTML that's spit out. So anyways, it's iPairs. So obviously you have your index and your item. Actually, I don't want to go over item. I want to go over my records, which again, if you remember, was being passed in through my API. So this is my records here. That was coming from the SQL. So that's that. It's in a table, so if it's tableized, it's all good. So I should be able to do rec player, because that was one of my values. And then we'll do rec score, I think. And we'll close off this divvy. Okay, let me spot check this real quick. Blah, blah, blah. Looks good. Blah, 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 da, da, da. Okay, so let's see if this blows up the internet. I'm going to hit next there. And just to make sure I got my API up there. Okay, let's get back over here. See what we got. And we have Mary and Charles. Sorry, Charles, Mary's.
That's all right. And they're in descending order. So
yeah, because that's what we put our
yeah.
Sweet. Is. So let's just put my leaderboard. So obviously, you know, since you have like access to the index and stuff, you could do things like, you know, if you're top player, you can write you know, Lua code in between these things. So I can actually do checks in here. So I can say, you know, if the index is 1, then, you know, we could do, you know, something special with this specific record. Maybe we'll make this super big and put it in an H2.
Totally rub it in that Mary has a high score.
Yeah. Sorry, Charles. I'll tell you what, though, Charles. You were the winner on some of my other earlier tests. You just didn't get to see it.
Oh, great.
It's funny. I just constantly, like, I'm always thinking of, I need names for my tests, and I just grab Corona people all the time. Okay, sorry guys, I'm a little slow here. I'm almost done. Okay, so in this case, like I said, I can, you know, here's the index of this iPairs loop. I'm going to say, you know, when you're the top player, number 1, then go H2 on me. If not, then we're regular. So, and it's good to be regular, from what I've heard. Let's go in here, and this again is our template. So we're going to run up there. And hopefully we have Mary is the big winner. Sorry, I'm really starting to lose it. Okay, so that was where I wanted to round trip. I didn't mean to take up 2 hours of your time, but I did warn you that it was a lot of stuff. And, you know, this, like I said, we're only tapping the surface. I haven't gotten into any of this other stuff. I haven't gotten into Mongo. I haven't gotten into files uploading. I haven't gotten into the file manipulation. There's a piece in there now where when you download files, you can send up some queries to get it sized, cropped, and proportionately, sized based on, its height or width. And those things are things that are useful for applications. Those are things that are useful for, mobile apps, cloud apps. It's like you want to have a nice high-res picture in case someone's going to hit your website, but you don't want to download that on your phone. So, you're going to be able to say, hey, I want, and the actual width and height aspect of it, the proportional part is already in there. If you go and read about using images, you can actually adjust on the width or the height value, and then you can also give it, you can also sharpen it too, because sometimes when you do that scaling, especially if you're going down on a JPEG, you might need to throw some sharpening. So you can do that, and that's just all thrown into the URL when you're pulling a file down to display. So, there's things like that. And again, this is something that's very helpful. This does the processing on the big box, upstairs. And so that way you don't have to bring a big file down and try to resize it or XYZ. So those are the kind of things that I'm trying to think about. And that's why I call it a hybrid cloud. It does cloudy things, but it also has some certain things that are very specifically put in place for, using with your app development. So.
Well, I tell you, I know you said that it's not, it's in beta, and you personally don't feel like it's production ready. But I have to say that one of Raj's goals, one of his personal goals, is to see a venture-backed startup use and launch their product using Corona. And I could see someone taking this and sort of jumping ahead. And even though it maybe not necessarily be production ready, and there are certainly going to be some breaking changes as things move forward and get more solid, I can see somebody taking this and leapfrogging into a space and putting something out with it, and then just sort of adjusting as they go. But startup is usually synonymous with pioneering something and getting
absolutely
something nobody else is doing. So
those are all things, Charles, that I have to think about all the time. It's like, how much do you give away? By giving it away, does it mean you're really giving it away? By giving it away, does it mean you're losing something?
Mm-hmm.
And those aren't always necessarily the case. And I think with the new model as well, it's like, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to this. I'm for the community. I've always have been in any community I've been involved in any kind of thing. And that's just how I am. That's just who I am. And I'm passionate about what I do. And if I'm going to take the time to get involved with the community and do something, I'm going to dive in. And you're going to have to kick me out, basically. You'll drag me out of here kicking and screaming. So, in a lot of ways, that's just how I am. And I'm very passionate about the work, and I'm very passionate about trying to help other people have fun with their work and simplify things. Sometimes I feel that things are overcomplicated for no reason, and except to maybe have some bragging rights or something, but beyond that, it's unnecessary. And so, my philosophy is cut out as much as possible, if possible.
Well, there you go. I think that's an excellent place to leave it. So, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put links in the show notes, and I'm going to encourage everybody to go take a look at this. Definitely get your feet wet, get your hands dirty, and when can we kind of? What do you think the timeline is, Chris? What's your personal?
It's available right now for beta testing. When I say production ready, just don't don't start trying to, don't, what I'm saying when I say production is I wouldn't post an app to an app store. Mostly because there's other things that I haven't addressed about how to get production ready. Because production ready means domain name, SSL, a couple other things. So, but that's something we'll cover obviously at some other point.
So are you thinking we'd see that next month, 3 months, 6 months?
As far as like getting ready for production ready, I don't think it's going to be very long before we're at that level. I'm assuming you're talking about the Coronium project, not the Corona Cloud Enterprise project.
Yeah, the Coronium project.
Because those are though they are one in the same to a certain degree, they are running at different timelines. So, so yes, Coronium LS. I mean, I have, I've only been the only one testing and hacking on it, so I'm hoping to get some other people in there. I'm sure I'll get some great feedback and dive in, fix some of that, and then during that time frame, I'm working on videos and cleaning docs and just trying to teach people how to use the thing.
Well, Chris, you're still screen sharing with us. If you'll close that down, we'll just we'll wrap it up here. So, like again, I said I'll put links in the show notes for everybody, and then if you have any questions going forward, of course you can ask Chris, but not today. Don't do it today. He's probably going to go back to sleep.
Probably. I will post all the doc links and the release links as well on the front of Coronium Cloud.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for Chris for giving us the lowdown, and I can't wait to play with it.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Congratulations, buddy.
Thanks, man. And I appreciate you guys giving me the time to talk it out.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
All right. More soon. You guys take care.